There is something uniquely powerful about an old map. Unlike modern satellite imagery, ancient maps were drawn by human hands, shaped by exploration, imagination, survival, and belief. They were never just tools for navigation. They were stories about how people understood the world around them. And sometimes, they show places that should not exist. Lands that appear before discovery, coastlines drawn centuries too early, territories that seem impossibly accurate or completely unexplainable. These maps challenge historians, cartographers, and archaeologists alike, not because they rewrite history, but because they force us to reconsider how knowledge traveled, how cultures interacted, and how memories survived. This is the story of 10 ancient maps that continue to puzzle the modern world. Long before global positioning systems and aerial photography, mapping the world was an uncertain art. Early cartographers relied on travelers' tales, ship logs, trade routes, and inherited knowledge. Accuracy was inconsistent, myth blended with reality, and the unknown filled enormous blank spaces. Yet occasionally, a map emerges that seems ahead of its time. These are not perfect maps, they are not supernatural artifacts, but they raise legitimate historical questions. How did their creators know what they knew? One of the most frequently discussed examples is a map created in the early 16th century by an Ottoman admiral and cartographer. Drawn on animal skin parchment, it depicts coastlines that appear unusually detailed for the period. Scholars believe the creator combined information from multiple older sources, some possibly lost today, including classical geographic knowledge and maritime intelligence gathered through trade and warfare. What makes this map fascinating is not mystery alone. It demonstrates how global knowledge networks existed long before modern communication. Maps were collaborations across civilizations. Knowledge traveled farther than we assume. Another remarkable case comes from medieval Europe, where world maps often blended theology and geography. These were not meant for navigation, but for illustrating humanity's place in the cosmos. Yet within their symbolic structures, recognizable geographic relationships sometimes appear. Continents arranged in ways that suggest exposure to broader knowledge than surviving records indicate. It raises the possibility that information passed orally, visually, or through lost manuscripts long before standard documentation. History records what survives, not everything that existed. Some maps from the age of exploration show coastlines sketched before official expeditions reached those shores. This has led to speculation ranging from undocumented voyages to accidental landfalls or indirect knowledge shared through trade intermediaries. While romantic explanations capture attention, historians usually pursue simpler answers: earlier contact, fragmented records, lost documentation, or reinterpretation of earlier geographic theories. Mystery does not always imply impossibility, but it often reveals forgotten connections. There are also maps featuring lands that were later proven imaginary. Phantom islands appeared repeatedly across centuries of navigation. Sailors reported sightings, cartographers recorded them, future explorers searched and found nothing. These mistakes were not foolish. They were reflections of the human tendency to trust observation, rumor, and tradition. Once placed on a map, an idea gained authority. Removing it required evidence that might take generations to obtain. Maps shaped reality as much as they described it. In Asia, ancient mapping traditions followed entirely different philosophies. Some prioritized spatial relationships over scale accuracy, focusing on political or cultural significance rather than geometric precision. Yet within these artistic frameworks, geographic alignments sometimes correspond strikingly with modern understanding.
This demonstrates that precision does not always depend on modern tools. Observation, accumulated over centuries, can produce remarkably informed perspectives, even when expressed symbolically. Another fascinating category includes maps reflecting indigenous geographic knowledge. Long before colonial exploration, many cultures possessed detailed mental or artistic mapping systems. Coastlines memorized through oral tradition, landmarks embedded in storytelling, travel routes encoded in ritual and song. When these perspectives were later compared with Western cartography, surprising overlaps emerged. Knowledge existed, it was simply documented differently. Ancient maps also reveal humanity's emotional relationship to the unknown. Regions beyond exploration were often populated with symbolic imagery, sea creatures, warnings, or decorative elements. These were not merely artistic additions, they expressed caution, fear, and curiosity. They communicated boundaries between familiarity and uncertainty, and they remind us that mapping was never purely scientific, it was psychological. Some of the most debated maps suggest advanced awareness of distant territories, details that appear unexpectedly accurate relative to their time. Historians approach these cases carefully. Accuracy may result from coincidence, reinterpretation, or combining multiple partial sources. But even when mysteries are resolved, their existence teaches an important lesson. Civilizations were more interconnected than once believed. Trade networks spanned continents, stories crossed oceans, fragments of knowledge merged into unexpected forms. Perhaps the most profound realization emerging from these maps is that history is incomplete by nature, not deliberately misleading, not fundamentally flawed, simply incomplete. Every generation discovers new artifacts, new documents, new interpretations. Ancient maps are reminders that knowledge is always evolving, and humility is essential when examining the past. These 10 examples are not about proving hidden civilizations or rewriting geography. They are about curiosity. They show how human beings tried to understand their world with limited tools, immense imagination, and remarkable determination. And sometimes they succeeded beyond expectations. In the second half of this exploration, we'll journey deeper into specific cases, examining how interpretation, myth, and rediscovery continue to shape our understanding of these puzzling maps. We'll explore how modern technology reassesses ancient drawings, how historians distinguish mystery from misconception, and why these artifacts still captivate global audiences today. Because maps do more than show us where we are. They show us how we think.
Ancient maps are not frozen objects from the past. They continue to evolve in meaning as new technology and research methods emerge. What once appeared mysterious may gain explanation. What once seemed ordinary may reveal unexpected depth. Modern historians approach these artifacts with tools their creators could never have imagined: satellite imaging, digital reconstruction, material analysis, and geographic comparison software. And yet, even with advanced tools, some questions remain open. Not because answers are impossible, but because history is layered. One of the most significant developments in recent decades has been the ability to compare ancient maps directly against modern geographical data. Digital overlays allow researchers to examine alignments between historical drawings and contemporary coastlines. Sometimes similarities disappear under scrutiny. Other times they become clearer. These results remind scholars to avoid extremes. Ancient cartographers were neither primitive guessers nor superhuman visionaries. They were observers working within the limits and strengths of their time.
Their achievements deserve admiration without exaggeration. Another fascinating discovery comes from material analysis. The inks, parchment, and pigments used in map creation reveal trade connections and technological capabilities. Materials sourced from distant regions show that maps were often collaborative products of global exchange. Ideas traveled alongside goods. Knowledge moved with merchants. Geographic understanding grew through interaction. This reinforces an important perspective. Mapping history is also the history of human contact. The concept of lost knowledge frequently surrounds mysterious maps. But loss does not necessarily mean disappearance. Sometimes knowledge survives indirectly, reshaped, translated, or incorporated into new works. Ancient libraries burned, manuscripts deteriorated, civilizations transformed. Yet fragments persisted, influencing later creators who might not even know their sources. Maps are cumulative memory. They carry echoes of voices long gone. Equally important is recognizing the role of interpretation. A coastline that appears accurate today might not have been drawn with that intent. Human perception naturally seeks patterns. Scholars must carefully separate coincidence from evidence. Scholarly debate thrives on this balance. Skepticism prevents fantasy. Curiosity prevents stagnation. Together, they move understanding forward. Some ancient maps also depict lands that seem entirely fictional, continents or islands later proven non-existent. Rather than discrediting their creators, these inclusions highlight the dynamic nature of knowledge. Maps were living documents, updated, revised, expanded. Errors reflected exploration in progress. And sometimes imagination served a purpose, inspiring journeys that ultimately corrected misconceptions. Without mistakes, discovery would slow. Technological reevaluation has also revealed hidden details within old maps. Infrared scanning and digital enhancement expose erased notes, faded lines, or overwritten sections. These discoveries reveal creative processes in motion. Cartographers reconsidering borders, adjusting coastlines, correcting assumptions. Maps were not static achievements. They were ongoing conversations. Beyond scientific study, ancient maps hold cultural and philosophical significance. They demonstrate how societies viewed themselves in relation to the world, centering certain regions, emphasizing spiritual landmarks, highlighting trade pathways. Geography was identity. Understanding these perspectives allows modern audiences to appreciate maps not only as navigational tools, but as reflections of worldview. There is also an emotional dimension to their mystery. Humans are drawn to unanswered questions. A coastline appearing too early, a land drawn too precisely. These moments invite wonder. They remind us that history is not fully charted, that discovery remains possible, that curiosity continues shaping knowledge. And perhaps that is their greatest contribution. In recent years, public fascination with ancient maps has grown dramatically. Digital archives allow global audiences to view manuscripts once restricted to scholars. Interactive tools enable detailed exploration. This accessibility transforms engagement. People do not simply read about history, they examine it themselves. And in doing so, they participate in interpretation, continuing the dialogue across centuries. Ultimately, the 10 maps explored here represent more than puzzles. They symbolize humanity's enduring attempt to understand its environment, to connect distant horizons, to place the unknown into context. Their mysteries do not undermine history, they enrich it. By revealing complexity, interconnection, and creativity far beyond simplistic narratives. When we look at ancient maps today, we are not only seeing geography, we are seeing ambition, fear, faith, collaboration. We are witnessing generations reaching outward, attempting to transform uncertainty into knowledge, and sometimes drawing further than their era should have allowed. Perhaps the most important lesson they offer is humility. Modern certainty rests upon accumulated effort. Future generations will reinterpret our own representations of the world. Knowledge evolves. Understanding deepens. Maps, ancient or modern, are milestones along an endless journey. The lands that shouldn't exist on these maps may never all be explained to complete satisfaction, but that is not failure. It is an invitation to explore, question, and remain open to discovery. Because history is not a closed book. It is a map still being drawn.